Now that we've prepared that file for import into our statistical software packages, we're going to go ahead and bring it in real quick. So I've got SPSS open, and if I go to the File menu and choose Open Data, everything I need to do is going to happen right here. Now, when you look, this window has a Files of Type section. We'll go ahead and choose Excel. So now it's only showing the Excel files. So the GraphMaker data file that I'm cleaned up is in the GraphMaker data folder. We'll open that. And now it's going to pop up and ask me how to interpret the contents of that file. What it does is it looks at the first row and gets the variable names, and then it starts to scan down into the data to figure out what kind of data is in each column, right? So you can see here that it's identifying these as string variables because there's text in them. It identified the pre and the post as scale, and the grade level is scale, right? So we'll just click OK. And it brings it in. Now, this data, it likes to do some really long decimal places. Those are things we can clean up as well. But the first thing that I want to do is actually make this a little bit more readable up at the top, right? So I'm going to widen these columns so now I can see all the variable names, right? And same with pre and post percent. Now in SPSS, this is not quite yet ready for me to analyze. Some of the things we have to do, we have to convert this data. I'm going to demonstrate for you how to convert a couple of things and then let you try to convert the rest, clean up the rest of the file for practice. Now, the TWS ID and the student ID can remain text fields. We don't actually need to mess with that. Grade level is being counted as a text field because it has the letter K in it for kindergarten, right? And so we want to go ahead and fix these things. So I'm going to use the transform menu. And there's a couple of things I want to show you. The first is automatic recode. So what this is going to do is scan through the column and find all the values that are in that column. And then it's going to recode them as a categorical variable, but assign numbers to each of the values. So ethnicity is a great example of this one. We'll put this over here. Now we need a new variable name. So ethnic group. Okay. And we can actually do multiple variables at once here, but I'm going to show them to you one at a time so that we can follow. Click OK. Now this output tells us what it did. It found blanks and called it number 1. And then in order, A is 2, B is 3, H is 4, etc. Now, if we go back to the data file, oh, there it is, ethnic group, pull that back here next to ethnicity, so we can see that it has turned those into numbers. And if we go to the variable view, you can see that each of those numbers has been associated with the one-letter code that matches it, right? Now, the one thing it didn't do is the blanks it turned into the number 1, so under missing values, we need to tell it that 1 means missing. Now, we've got that there. We can also click the value labels button to see what that looks like. Right? So then another thing that we might need to do, the ethnic group is still a categorical variable. It's nominal, so that's fine. But the grade level is in there as a categorical variable, and we don't want that. It's an ordinal variable. So we can fix that. We'll go back to transform, and we're going to recode into the same variables. So grade. We don't need to give it another variable name because it's going into the same column, but we do need to go into old and new values. So wherever it says 1, we want it to be 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, 5, 5, and I think there is no 6th grade. I can't remember, but you know what? I'll do 6th grade just in case. Now, the reason I'm doing it this way instead of auto recoding it is that it would sort those in order and then number them according to the order, which when you alphabetize, the digits come first and then the K would be last. So K would be coded as 7, which is in the wrong place. K needs to come before 1. So we'll put K here and we'll call that a 0 so that when we sort in order, K comes before 1. Then we click OK. And it's recoded it there. We can see in the output window. We'll go back to the data set. Not much has changed, right? Except now when I scan down here, I should find some zeros somewhere. I didn't check beforehand, so I don't know how far down. There we go. So these students are in kindergarten. Now, it's still a string variable. So what we need to do is come to the variable view, and next to grade, click the ellipsis button and reselect that as a numeric value. Click OK. Now it's a numeric value. We need to define the values for that. So 0 is equal to K, 1 is equal to, we could even, if we wanted to, put in first, 2, second, 3, and we don't actually know if any were left blank. Let's go back through and see. Okay, so here's a teacher candidate that did not enter the grade level. So in SPSS, that shows up as a dot to show that it's empty. So we don't actually need to define a missing value for that because it doesn't actually have any content in it. If you recall though, ethnic group 1 is the missing value. And so if we switch, it still, instead of being changed with a label, it still says 1, right? So we can actually fix that by going here to the values, and 1 can be equal to a dot. Now when we go back, hey look, now it looks the same as the missing data over here. Now the final thing that I want to clean up are these percentage scores for the pre and the post. Having all of these trailing zeros in the decimal just looks ridiculous. The scores were actually kept to a single decimal place, so we need to make our values in SPSS look the same. So I'm going to come over here back to the variable view window, and you can see that variable 11 and 12, they've got 15 decimal places and a width of 18. We're going to change the decimal places to 1. And then we actually don't need it to be 18. We can change it to a width of, say, 6, which is actually wider than it needs to be, but there you go. So we've changed that. When we come back to the data view, now it looks pretty decent. So with the file that you can find in Canvas, there's a link for it directly below this video. Go ahead and try to replicate those corrections that I made in SPSS, and then go ahead and also recode gender, ethnicity, free reduced lunch, SWD, ELL, and subject. Right? So when you're done with these, they should be stored as numeric values, but the value labels and the missing data will be corrected so that it displays properly, just like we did with grade and ethnic group.